Patrick, can you speak as well as play saxophone there?
Yes.
That was you playing, right?
Yes, that's right. That was me playing.
Absolutely. No, that in fact is Dave
That was me
Brubeck.
playing the piano.
Yeah.
That was me on the drums. That was me on the tenor sax. Paul Desmond and Dave Brubeck had nothing to do with it.
I don't believe you.
Well, you're smart.
He's Patrick Moore.
And she is Erica Edwards.
Indeed. Government and journalism professors extraordinaire here at Richland
Extraordinaire.
College. Right. That's not a broadcast.
Legends in our own minds.
Right, exactly. Thank you. Thank you for knocking me down a peg. I do always appreciate it, my friend.
Right.
This is a little endeavor that for the past several years we have designated as More and Friends. He's More. I'm at least one of his friends. And we have another friend in the studio
today. We have another friend today.
Right.
We spent several years with More and Friends, being really More and Friend, singular. But this year
it's time he gets out more.
It's time I get out more. And so we're having weekly interviews with people around campus. We're having a great time. So before we start, I want to do what I normally forget to do, and that is to tell anyone who's listening to please try to contact us during the show. You can contact us on Facebook at Richland Student Media.
Indeed.
Or you can contact us via Twitter.
Hashtag KDUX.
That's correct.
KDUX.
Hashtag KDUX on the Twitter. And
I'll be monitoring and breaking in rudely and unceremoniously and telling him, hey, Patrick, you've got a question.
That's right. And, one of the things that I haven't said is that even if you're listening to this in an archived version, if you're listening later, and a question is raised, you can send it. You can still send it the question, and we will get back to it later. If you aren't listening in real time, you can ask a question next week, and we can get hold of our guest today and get a response to you. I'm sure that she'd be glad to respond, even if it's not during the hour here. We're here, right? Right.
Certainly.
She's nodding her head, so we can take that as a yes.
Cool. We should probably tell folks who she is.
She is. I don't know. We're going to just talk. We're just refer to her
as third
person for the rest of the hour.
So what is she going to talk about? I'm sorry, Jennifer. Patrick, don't be mean.
Right.
Don't be mean. Jennifer Neily.
Yes, we're here with Jennifer Neily. She
Indeed.
is representing, and I'm not sure exactly how to say this. I'm going to say representing nutrition. But what is the official name of the program or department that you...
Actually, it's biology, and it is a nutrition class.
Okay, it's biology and a nutrition class. So
Yes.
your field is biology.
Right.
And do you teach other than the nutrition?
It's just a nutrition class, and it's the nutrition class that is transferable to all the universities.
Okay.
Yeah. So health professionals take the class for the nursing profession. So if they're going anywhere else, it's the nutrition class. Yeah, it's the principles of nutrition.
Is it something, though, that it should be considered a science class for science majors in this class?
Yes.
Or could I, as a journalism or communications type, interested in nutrition and staying healthy, also benefit from the class?
Absolutely. A number of years ago, I can't remember exactly when, it became one of the core classes.
Oh, good.
Nice.
So we went from some enrollment to a lot. And we went from mostly nursing and the health professions to journalism, education, government.
Government, I hope.
And I think, people think, oh, nutrition, this ought to be interesting. Maybe a blow-off class.
Oh,
no.
Not.
Yeah, exactly. So people, I think, and so at first I was a little disappointed. Dr. Canham, Ray Canham is my dean, and I used to be really disappointed in my dropout rate. And I think people just think, oh, nutrition, this is going to be really easy.
Yes, right.
And people don't realize that nutrition is a science.
Mm-hmm.
And nutrition is a science and not an opinion, which is something we often say.
Which we will get to today, yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Erica.
Well, I'm wondering, as a part of this class, one of the things that I'm really interested in, although sometimes schedules don't allow it as much as I would like, not only meal planning, but do you get into recipes and preparing and cooking and all that stuff, or not as much?
Not really.
Not much, okay.
Yeah, we really get into the science. When you leave my class, and now there's a number of different professors that teach it, but in my class anyway, and one of the reasons that I love to teach is I really stay up to date on the current events and relevant in the nutrition field, is you're going to walk away, hopefully, if you're studying well enough,
right,
knowing what happens to what you ate. What did you eat today, for example?
I ate a bowl of chicken noodle soup, Progresso light chicken noodle soup.
Okay, Erica,
And a
let's try you for an example.
Okay.
And a couple of
Maybe
cuties,
it's
the
a
little
little-
oranges that I had
cuties?
afterwards.
Well, and what I had, and I'm not really very proud of this, especially since I'm talking to a nutritionist, but I had some coffee as I was running out the door this morning,
I had several
and
cups of coffee.
and
too.
I grabbed
So did I.
I grabbed some Chobani blueberry Greek yogurt.
Okay, so your Chobani yogurt was protein and carbohydrates, and depending on, it might have had some fat. If it was a non-fat, it wouldn't have had any fat. But
I'm not sure if it's fat or just low fat.
okay,
Or not
so
fat.
let's just say that you threw some nuts in there.
Did it taste good?
It tasted good. And
Okay, well, then it was not non-fat.
and I don't know though. The Greek yogurt is a little bit different, but it may have actually been the non-fat. But I do have nuts in the
Okay,
in
now
the lunch
I interrupted.
bag.
I'm sorry.
That's
Jennifer,
okay.
go
No,
ahead.
quite all right. Interrupt all you like. That's not. No, my students do it all the time. I encourage them to. So I like the
Oh,
questions.
be careful about giving us
Yeah,
that part. Be very careful.
Bad
I don't know which
start.
one of us you have to worry about more.
Right.
Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
So anyway, so you ate food that you recognize, but in my class, what you're going to learn is you're going to take the protein that you had, the carbohydrate and the fat, and we're going to break it down into the carbohydrate, the glucose, the amino acids, and the fatty acids and the glycerol. And we're going to take that and we're going to digest, absorb, transport, and metabolize those nutrients. And in my class, one of the things they're going to learn is they're going to learn what happens to those and with those processes in the science of nutrition. That's just one of the things that we're going to do in my class.
Okay, good. Now, you know what? One thing we sort of jumped right in here, and I'm guilty here, but the first thing I usually like to do is ask you to formally introduce yourself. So tell us
very good.
who you are, where you came from, what's your background, what's your experience, what led you to be here at Richland today teaching biology and a nutrition class in the biology department.
First of all, I came from my mom.
Okay.
I started out as a child.
In the beginning.
And so, like many people in my field, we get involved with nutrition because of our interests, some kind of a personal interest. For me, I wasn't an obese child, but I was a big girl. And so, I was teased by my brothers, by my weight, and my family were, we were normal sized individuals, but my mom knew that it bothered me. And so we went on the various diets. Back in the day, it was the grapefruit and egg diets,
Lord.
and and
I love grapefruits and I love eggs.
I do too, but
don't
yeah,
wanna do
that's
just those,
not
right.
gonna, and
No.
I even remember secretly seeing an ad for some kind of a supplement and going and buying it and secretly, buying it and taking it and praying, please God, make me skinny. Did it work? No. Surprise, surprise.
Right.
And so it was when I got out of 8th grade, my mom had heard about this program called Weight Watchers. Now, back then, it wasn't that old. I'm dating myself. And Weight Watchers is what taught me really good nutrition. Because back in the day, it was very balanced. You had to eat from all the food groups.
Right.
You even had to eat liver once a week.
Oh my God.
I know, that's how old it was.
That
And
would be a
I swear
killer for me.
I was brainwashed. It was
Unless
like,
it
no
was-
liver, no weight loss.
I can tell you that if it were formulated into pate, maybe
Yeah,
so,
right,
maybe so,
exactly,
with all the
right.
butter and all that
Right,
that
yeah.
added to it, right?
Defeats the purpose,
Yes,
Patrick.
I know, I get it.
so that, so I was successful with that, but then college came along, and with that, the typical college experience and alcohol and gaining weight and then losing weight. I'd quit drinking, and I'd, the freshman 15 and then graduating from high school, getting into the working world, and this was a different career. And all through my 20s and so forth, I had experimented with various weight loss. I was never happy with where I was. I was never, it was just kind of the up and down, the yo-yo kind of a thing. And so It was, but Weight Watchers was always the program that I always kind of went back to. Never ever worked the same the second, third, fourth, fifth time around. But it was when I was at a point in my life when I had I guess it was an epiphany, and it was when I was having a conversation with my mom, and I had recently had quit a nasty 2-pack-a-day smoking habit.
Oh, good for you.
Of course, I smoked to manage my weight, but yeah, it was nasty. But I did do it, and I was wanting to change careers, and I was in sales and marketing at the time, up in Chicago, or I had moved to Dallas at the time. Before that, and she said, if you want to do something different, you probably have to go back to school. And I thought, if I was to go back to school, I would study nutrition. And it was like the light bulb went off. And because I was at a point where I would be reading something and it would make a whole lot of sense. Some supposed expert would say one thing, and I was like, well, gosh, that makes a lot of sense. And the next day I would read something entirely different, totally contradicted what I had just read.
Which also made sense.
Exactly. And I didn't know what to believe. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to go back to school and find out for myself.
Good for you.
And so I went, I got my master's in exercise and sports nutrition. And it was my first semester back was anatomy and physiology, microbiology, chemistry, all with the labs.
Right.
And my first
tough road.
But my first exam back was an A in chemistry. And I never realized I had such an affinity for the sciences. And I just loved it. I was, off to the races. And in that time, I also found out that just having my master's wasn't enough unless I became a registered dietitian. So that set me on a path to where I am today. So, which was in order to, as the nutrition expert, once you have a degree in nutrition, then to become a registered dietitian, I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist. We added the nutritionist onto that. So
what's involved in that?
Yeah, so it's a bachelor's minimally, and then it's a supervised program experience of 6 months to 9 months. It's about at least 1,000 hour supervised program.
Okay.
And there's a number of programs in the area. I have an intern this week, but she's actually in
She's not
class
here today.
today. I know.
Yeah,
I was I know she would have loved this. But anyway, so and then you're eligible to sit for the exam and then continue education. So I have that, and then I have subsequently gone on to become a well coach, a certified health coach, kind of to add on to that.
Okay.
So
sweet.
Yeah.
And so you teach this program. How many different people here at Richland teach nutrition? Are you the only one, or
no?
Other
There
teachers?
are probably 3 or 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you got a lot of students.
Yes.
And so it would be too much for you to do.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I have, and as a part-time, as adjunct, we can only teach 2 classes a semester.
Right.
Yeah, and we do have one full-time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and she teaches some other classes as well.
Cool.
Yeah. So, and I started teaching. This is my 20th year teaching. Yeah. And I started teaching when in 1998. For a few reasons. One was to, when you teach, you overlearn.
Right.
And I didn't want to forget the basics of nutrition. And I also wanted to get over my fear of speaking in front of people.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
So
Yes, that's
nothing
good
like
strategy.
teaching to force that,
That's
right?
right.
Yeah,
That's right.
definitely.
Uh-huh.
So,
Excellent. So you no longer are afraid of speaking.
That's
I can
right.
tell. Sitting here cool, calm, and collected in front of the microphone. That's
Yeah.
excellent. So let's talk about nutrition.
Sure.
Okay, when we said you were going to come here, the first thing I thought, and I think in probably the first email I sent you after we'd settled that you were going to be here, was that I mentioned Michael Pollan's book, The Omnivore's Dilemma. And I read that book, I don't know, probably 15 years ago, something like that. I don't remember how old it is. But you just grabbed it and you brought it out there. Yeah, and so you've got these books, and when I read his stuff Food, oh my gosh, you've got the whole collection here. This is the full Michael Pollan library I'm looking at now on the table. I read this book, and I thought, oh my gosh, that makes sense. But then I thought, some of that seems a little bit maybe overblown. And so I want to read his 7 rules. Because I know that you know this, but I'm just for the people who are listening, I want to read Michael Pollan's 7 rules for eating. First of all, he says, his mantra is eat food, not too much, mostly plants. Eat food, not too much, mostly plants. Now that makes perfect sense to me because it's not somebody telling me I can't eat meat or that I have to follow some specified diet. That's just something that makes sense to me. Eat food, not too much, mostly plants. But eat food. Of course, even though that makes sense, it's like, okay, wait a second now. That's one of those glib phrases that it's hard to know what exactly that means. Of course, we're going to eat food. What do you mean, eat food? So he goes on to say, okay, now here are his 7 rules. Number 1, don't eat anything your great-grandmother wouldn't recognize as food. When you pick up that box of portable yogurt tubes or eat something with 15 ingredients you can't pronounce, ask yourself, what are those things doing there? So don't eat anything your great-grandmother wouldn't recognize as food.
So Doritos are out.
Doritos are out. Doritos are out, according to Michael Pollan.
Okay.
Rule number 2, don't eat anything with more than 5 ingredients or ingredients you can't pronounce. That's another one of those rules that if you say it like that and just say it, read it, it seems to make perfect sense. But then if you take a step back from it and think about it a minute.
What it really means.
What does it really mean? And should I really pay attention to that? Rule number 3, stay out of the middle of the supermarket. Shop on the perimeter of the store. Real food tends to be on the outer edge of the store near the loading docks where it can be replaced with fresh foods when it goes bad. Now, that does seem to make good sense to me.
Fruits and veggies.
Now, as a general rule anyways, a general recommendation at least. Yes? Okay. Hold on. I'm going to finish the 7. So rule number 4, don't eat anything that won't eventually rot.
Twinkies. Out.
In fact, Twinkies is the example given here. Okay, rule number 5, it's not just what you eat, but how you eat. Always leave the table a little hungry, Pollan says. Number 6, families traditionally ate together around a table and not a TV. At regular meal times. It's a good tradition, and enjoy meals with the people you love. And rule number 7, don't buy food where you buy your gasoline. And so that's another thing. Of course, that's a problem for me because the Kroger store where I shop has a gas station attached to it. So I buy my gasoline there, so I can't shop there. Is that what Michael's telling me? Anyway, those are his 7 rules. And I want to hear what you have to say about his rules because some of these sound sensible to me. Some of these sound superficially sensible, but then when I start to think a little bit more deeply about them, I start to question whether or how much attention I should actually pay to those rules.
And some of them sound a little bit like a pipe dream
Right.
Some days with some schedules. Finals week, for example. But that's
okay, I've read the rules. What is your reaction to Michael Pollan's 7 rules?
The one that pops out, first of all, and I...
Be reminded of them. There they are.
So one of the things as registered dietitian nutritionist, and a lot of nutritionists might say is like shop the perimeter of the grocery store.
Right.
Like, and
that's one of the rules.
We've been saying that for a long time because you've got that wonderful, naturally colorful section, the fruits and the vegetables,
Right.
and your more natural type areas. But if you don't go up and down the aisles, what are you going to be missing? What is up and down the aisles? You do have whole grains like your beans and
Right.
legumes, and they're
in the middle of the store.
They are in the middle of the store. Okay. Rice is in the, whole grains are in the middle of the store. So
That's
there
right.
are some good things.
Frozen foods.
Frozen foods
yeah.
are in the middle of the store. So that whole
Nothing inherently wrong with frozen foods.
No, absolutely not. They're actually, in some instances better than fresh, depending on, because frozen food, is harvested at the type vegetables, for example, and fruits are harvested at the time of optimal ripeness. So and they're flash frozen, locking in those nutrients. So versus others that might be harvested and then gassed on their way to to the distribution center, and so So and then how long do they sit on the shelf? So I think frozen is a great way to keep vegetables and fruits available.
Okay, so that frozen burrito I have in my freezer right now is okay.
We want to keep it simple. Now, the one he talks about too, as far as the ingredient list. Okay, so I actually have.
Oh no! Have you got it too?
What? Oh, I have something similar to that, but yeah.
I was going to read these off because I thought it would be hilarious for the listener.
But okay, so I get what he's saying, but here's the thing, and this is where okay, so if you do, I had I can't remember what I was doing this comparison of almond milk. I mean, people think, what do you think is healthier, almond milk or potato chips?
Intuitively, I would say almond milk. But since you're asking me, I'm guessing it's potato chips.
Because
critical thinking applied in journalism. There you go.
If you're going by Michael Pollan's rules, almond milk, of course, but if you look at the ingredient list on almond milk, it's going to be several lines long.
Right.
Because you have a lot of additives, okay? Yeah. Potato chips, you know how many ingredients are in potato chips?
Potatoes and salt.
And oil.
And oil.
3. 3. Very simple.
Okay, great.
Chips.
Fritos, my favorite.
That's a different story.
Yeah.
Oh.
Sorry. There's going to be they're more but just simple. Yeah. So
potato chips.
Now the problem with potato chips is the science behind the food science that goes into manufacturing that chip and why you can't stop at. And that's why
nobody can eat just one.
Exactly.
Right.
But you
can eat them. That's not a problem. And I would much rather eat a regular potato. Don't give me any baked chips. No way. I mean, they're horrible.
Is that right?
Oh my gosh.
They don't taste very good. Honestly.
They don't taste very good.
Why would you waste your taste buds on something nasty like that when you could just savor the real thing?
Well, and if you're going to eat a little bit of empty calorie, at least have it be not
as
horrible.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's the portion. So there's actually something called the bliss point. This is food science. I mean, this just fascinates me. There's a wonderful book called Salt, Sugar, Fat by Michael Moss that just goes into, it's the perfect combination of carbohydrate, which is going to be your sugar, the salt and the oil, the fat, and that bliss point of when, this is perfect, this is too much, and that's when they get you.
So the scientists, the evil scientists in the Lay's lab are trying to find exactly the bliss point in that wavy potato chip.
I have to. What really got me so fascinated with the whole science of flavoring foods and so forth was a 60 Minutes interview. It's called Flavor. It was Morley Safer. It goes back because he's since passed away, but it was the Flavor. Something about flavor. Anyway, it was a company that you would never heard of, huge in the industry, but it was a company called Givaudan, and they are flavor people. They're a Swiss company, I believe, and their whole existence is flavoring foods. And so they're in this orchard, in California, and they're pulling pieces of fruit off of a tree and extracting the taste of it, and they're looking for the perfect next orange flavor. And so there's the scientists, there's Morley Safer and some others, and then there's the scientists. And this 15-second conversation I actually share it in my classes and I talk about it because it was, what we're looking for is a flavor that is a burst on your tongue but doesn't linger.
Okay. All right. So and they can chemically produce that.
Yeah. So they don't want it to linger because they want you. And Morley said, so you don't want it to linger, so you drink more. And the scientist says, exactly.
Right.
And so Morley says, so what you're doing is you're creating like
Addiction.
what would be addiction. And he says, exactly. Hello.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was.
Right.
I know.
Right.
Anyway, so
Okay.
so that's why when we talk about eat food, we're talking about not highly manufactured food like substances. We're talking about food that's a recognizable food.
Right.
Yeah.
That your great grandmother would recognize as food.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the other things, talking about what you can pronounce. Okay, so somebody might not be able to pronounce cobalamin or maybe peroxidine or ascorbic acid.
Yeah, but we got to have those.
Exactly.
Okay, let me do my little thing here.
Yes.
That I have been looking forward to ever since we decided we were going to have nutrition or we managed to get you on the schedule. Here, for all of you out there in listening land, I want to read off a set of ingredients, and you tell me if you would eat whatever it is that I'm reading the ingredients for. Here we go, and I'm just going to read them in order from top to bottom. And the way they do these things, they always have the most the highest percentage ingredient at the top. So
Right.
It works from the top to the bottom. So here we go. Water, sugars, which includes glucose, fructose, sucrose, maltose, starch, fiber. Oh, fiber is separate, I guess. Then amino acids, glutamic acid, aspartic acid, histidine, leucine, lysine, phenylalanine, arginine, valine, alanine, serine, glycine, threonine, isoleucine, proline, tryptophan, cysteine, tyrosine, methionine. Then we have palmitic acid, omega-6 fatty acid, linoleic acid, linolenic acid, oleic acid, palmitoleic acid, stearic acid, lauric acid, myristic acid, capric acid, ash, phytosterols, oxalic acid, tocopherol, phylloquinone, thiamine, riboflavin, yellow-brown E160A, yellow-orange E101, methylbutyl ethandate, methylbutyl ethanoate, methylpropan, methylbutyl hydroxyl, methylbutanol, methylbutanol, ethyl butanoate, pentyl acetate, natural ripening agent, ethene gas. So, would you eat the thing that I just described based on Michael Pollan's rules? What I just read the ingredients for was a man who's a chemist took a banana into his lab and broke it down into the component chemicals.
I was going to guess an orange,
and
something orange.
That's a banana. I also have here an egg and blueberry. And it sounds very much the same. So when I read, eat anything that has more than 15 ingredients or anything that you can't pronounce, when we see things we can't pronounce on the ingredient list, the fact that you can't pronounce it does not inherently mean you shouldn't eat it.
Right.
But if you were buying a container of blueberries or raspberries, it wouldn't have all those ingredients on the.
That's true.
Correct.
So I'm just saying you'd be okay there.
Right.
Well,
but there,
if you see something that has methyl-butyrate listed on the ingredient list,
heck no,
then you wouldn't want to eat it.
Right.
But you probably should. Or at least you wouldn't want to not eat it because that ingredient appeared on the list.
Right. And there are additives that serve a purpose in preserving food.
Right.
And so.
Which is one of the questions I was going to ask. There's a lot of discussion among people who I know and love, in fact, who say, oh, preservative, and they have the little raised hands with the crossed fingers there, which if you're watching in real time, you can see me doing this.
Yeah, there you go.
And they say preservative's bad because it introduces artificial chemicals into the food. And so what's your response to that?
And similarly, what about organics, if that's not too different?
We're going to go there.
Okay, I'm sorry. I don't want to jump in.
No, that's
go
okay.
Ahead.
So,
preservatives.
Yes.
They serve a purpose. I mean, there's in as far as
and if they serve a purpose, And do they do that safely? Is this
Yes.
right? Is this preservative not going to hurt me, or at least going to hurt me less than eating unpreserved food?
Yes. I mean, because
Okay,
if we
it's a
don't
tough
have those,
question to answer,
right?
I'm
No,
sorry.
if we don't have those preservatives, and I'm not. I mean, I am a true believer in keeping things as simple as possible.
Right.
In a perfect world, we would have our own garden, and we would grow our own food, and I think that's, in a perfect world, that's Michael Pollan's perfect world. We would
Right.
have our own garden and do that, but we don't. I'm a realist. It's nutrition you can live with. And so, keep it as simple as we can, but, there's a time and a place, and we have to buy foods that have some preservatives in them,
Right,
and the whole process thing, there's nothing wrong with processed food. I mean, I love to drink milk. I eat Greek yogurt. And those are all processed foods.
Right.
It's the kind of foods, and they have simple ingredients.
Oh my gosh, you just reminded me of something. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But it's what I try to encourage my clients to do is to limit those, as I said before, the highly manufactured food-like substances that you don't even recognize. That basically they're kind of like
So
made.
Twinkies.
Yeah.
So we're okay not to eat Twinkies.
You're okay not to, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't.
Yeah,
and
necessarily.
I mean, it's if you love it and it's something that you enjoy. There's no food that's so bad you should never eat it, and there's no food so good that's the only thing you should eat.
Kind of all
Quantity.
things in moderation.
All things in
I mean,
moderation.
As much as people hate that word moderation, it's
especially when it comes to food.
Right.
It's right.
Right.
And his whole idea of it's not just what you eat, it's how you eat it. I'm so believe is when I work. One of the things that I do in my practice, I'm in private practice. One of the things I do is teach adjunct here. I also have a coaching practice, and I help people develop a healthy relationship with food, so they can.
I should probably talk to you.
So they can, and it's somebody that's been on every diet and they're ready to try something different, and that's what I help them. Really, it's not about that perfect weight, because you know what, some people, and this analogy is not mine, but some people were born St. Bernards and some people were born greyhounds, and that greyhound is never ever going to be a St. Bernard. St. Bernard is never going to be a greyhound, no matter how hard they try. But yet people have this idea that they can sculpt themselves into this.
Right.
And
and you just, I wasn't going to talk about this, but in today's culture, women are so much more at risk of that kind of thing than men
yes.
are. Now, it's getting worse and worse for men as well.
It is, yes, it is.
There's an interesting story during the
especially
winter,
with social media.
the Olympics that just happened, and Andrew Rippon, who was the figure skater, and he wrote this thing about the body shaming that goes on among male figure skaters, and so that kind of phenomenon is getting worse and worse for men as well. But women, every woman, obviously false, but the phenomenon is so pronounced where women all think they want to look like, and I threw all in there again, take all out, but so many women think they want to look like Gwyneth Paltrow, who's thin as this thin, and somehow she's virtuous because she looks like that, and you are not virtuous if you don't look that way.
It's ridiculous. And you know what really bothers me is it's when, okay, let's say that you've got, my kids have 4 legs, and so I don't have the skin kids, but it's when if you're a child growing up in a family and mom or dad's not happy with the way they are, they're always going on a diet. How do you think that's reflecting on the child? They're not good enough the way they are. And that just perpetuates through their life. And it just, begins this dissatisfaction with body, the body dissatisfaction.
Right. Okay, I want to talk about diets here, and then I want to get to organic, because it's really important to get to. And there's some other things that are really critical for us to get to. But first, I want to just say my idea, and this is what I have told my friends many times, and I may be completely wrong, so you can tell me. I'm glad. That's one of the reasons I'm glad you're here. I have always said that if you want to go on a diet to lose weight, then fine, go on one of these diets. Any of them, just pick one. It doesn't matter. Any old diet will do. As long as, and I think as long as you start paying attention to what you eat, any of these diets, for the most part, within reason, will cause you to be more mindful of what you're eating. And if you are mindful of what you're eating, you're going to have positive results. When I have had success in losing weight, it hasn't been because I went on a diet. I didn't go on the paleo diet. I didn't go on the Atkins diet. I didn't do that. All I did was start saying, okay, I'm going to have less beer, less pizza, eat a little bit less when I sit down at every meal, and not have two big handfuls of potato chips right before I go to bed, just because I'm feeling a little pinked. I'll sleep just fine without that. So diets, there's paleo is huge these days. Keto, I've heard. You go on. If I go on whatever, one of these sites, Instagram. Yeah, I see keto this, keto that, keto the other thing, and it's like, and I'm just thinking, all these people are just trying to make a buck. Anyway, go ahead. What about diets? Tell me about diets. What's the good diet? What's a bad diet? What should I do if I want a diet?
So my philosophy, and actually it's I'm using the words of Brian Wansink, it's the best diet to be on is the one that you don't know you're on.
Yep.
Okay. I can buy that.
So because, diets, they're not sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
Most people will go on a diet and they're going to go off of it and they're going to gain the weight back.
At least.
Right. And then some. And so, yes, you can lose weight on a diet.
Mm-hmm.
But it's temporary, but it's not teaching you, the habits. Keto is like it's the new Atkins. I mean, people lost weight on Atkins because they were, restricting carbohydrates and not because carbs are bad. Okay. Mm-hmm. It's that it's just over consuming the carbohydrates, and it's the package that they're with. It's not that the potato is bad. It's that it's, on this huge plate, loaded with also bacon and cheese and butter and sour cream and everything else, and everything that goes along with that.
You're describing my dinner last night.
Sorry. And there's,
half the potato, Patrick. That's all.
And here's something. There's nothing that's off limits if you're, and this is where it gets to being in touch with your hunger and fullness, and being mindful. Like he's talking about the 80%. The Japanese have this 80%, and they call it hara hachabu, I think is what it's something like that.
If you speak Japanese out there, give us a call. Or send it to us on Facebook or Twitter.
But it's and I think it's very valid because and I use a hunger fullness scale of eating until you're about a 7 on the scale, you're satisfied. And that's, an 8 is like when you're full. It's like, I shouldn't have had those last few pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can learn to do that, there's no food that's off limits. But it's eating mindfully. It's eating slowly. It's enjoying your food. It's not, sitting in the car and snarfing it down or, running through, the cafeteria and eating at your desk and eating it really fast. You've got to learn to enjoy your food. And, and that's where we're just so messed up with our eating habits.
I have a 1-year-old, and we have already, Christy, my wife, and I have already said we're going to ban phones from the dinner table.
Excellent. Yeah, there's just, getting back to the dinner, around the dinner table. There's the Blue Zones is, it
sounds like a band.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? It's there's 5 areas around the world that they have the longest living individuals, and there's a number of different practices that they have. They don't have fitness centers, but they're more, they're more active, but they live the longest. Octogenarians.
Right. They have more 80-year-olds than anybody else.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and there's one here in the States, one area of the country, and that's in California.
Huh. We're in California.
Loma Linda. And it has a lot to do with community as well. So it's a sense of community. So yeah.
So if I want to lose weight, all I need to do is move to Loma Linda
It's not so much. It's healthfulness. You know, it's and the interesting thing is their diets are very different, but the majority of them are plant-based. So I mean that they do have that commonality. So a
Eat
plant
food, not too much, mostly plants. Right.
Yes, there's definitely that commonality. You know, and when people ask me, said, you know, Neily, should I do this? My answer to many questions is no, yes, maybe. Because there are no absolutes. I mean, everybody is an individual.
I want to know the rules.
But that's,
right?
I know, and that's why, and I think that's why so many people, and why, as a science, you know, nutrition is it's a baby science. I mean, it's so young. The first vitamin wasn't discovered until the early 1900s, and so and there's a couple of really great quotes, and one is science doesn't know everything, and that's why it doesn't stop, or something like that. You know, that's one of them. And there's some really great quotes because science is ever evolving. And I know people get very frustrated because they want to know the answers. And yet, you know, the media is going to take one study and think that that's the end all and be all.
Yep.
But what we don't realize is everything is built upon all the other studies that have come before it.
So do you think that's the reason? And my husband always comments on this. So, you know, one time caffeine's good for you. Now caffeine's bad for you. Right. Now fat is good for you. Now fat is bad for you. Eat eggs, don't eat eggs. Eat butter, don't eat butter. Eat bacon, don't eat bacon, even if your life depends on it. I mean, is that just a nature of the science and the discipline?
Yeah, and talking about, you know, it might have been the whole butter margarine thing that kind of got me really confused way back in the day when I was like, one day I would hear this and this. Yeah. And so, you know, margarine, because margarine is a vegetable oil, I think that's where butter, it's bad, it's got cholesterol. So it's kind of like, and then margarine, oh, it's better, it's made from vegetable oil. Then we started learning about these trans fats that are so bad for us. So then we switched back to butter. And so, but now trans fats have pretty much been eliminated from our diet, thank goodness. Right. Since 2006, they've been required to be on a food label. And so now pretty much hardly any foods have trans fats in them, and they're the man-made type of fat. So now there's, you know, this swing back. But, you know, so it's, but it's just the evolution. You know, when I think there was another quote, I think George Bernard Shaw, and I'm misquoting him, but it's like when, you know, one study is published, 10 others, you know, when one question is answered, 10 others result from it.
And, you know, there's also an element, which, speaking of the science, and I'll talk about this in my class, and I talk about it in the context a lot of times of climate change. When scientists talk about their science, whether that's the science of nutrition, the science of climate change, or any other science, scientists tend to use a very provisional language. They say, well, we're not exactly sure, because anything can always change. And so they say, well, here's the answer so far as we know it at this point, and within these error bars. And so when scientists talk about what they do it in this provisional, seemingly uncertain language. And the way non-scientists who are not accustomed to that kind of language, when they hear that, they think, oh, they've just admitted they don't even know what they're talking about. I don't need to listen to them. Maybe climate change is a hoax. Maybe this nutrition scientist has no idea what she's talking about.
And you know, and there's actually something, and I think that so many people, you know, people ask me, well, what's the difference between a dietitian and a nutritionist? I said, well, anybody can call themselves a nutritionist. You know, there's no, you know,
I'll never do that.
Okay. Well, my students, I mean, they can, you know, take my class, and, you know, and there's mail order, you know, degrees, and, you know, you can take a weekend course, and people think, well, you know, I think I do a pretty good job of making nutrition sound really simple, and for the most part, and I thought, well, you know, and maybe people think, well, it's not that difficult, but I can make it sound that way because I understand the science behind it. And I think there's something, I think it's the Dunning-Kruger effect. I think.
Oh, yes, that's exactly what it is. I talk about that in my class
yeah,
as well.
So it's when somebody doesn't know, so they're like ignorant to not the knowledge of, the really knowing, so they can say whatever they want because they just don't know what they don't know.
The less competent they are, the more confident they tend to be.
Yes. And I think that's why when somebody goes to a quote-unquote nutritionist, they're like, I've got the answers for you. Your doctor doesn't know what he's talking about. And
Right.
and so the person like, oh my gosh, I've got, they've got the answers for me. And it's just because, this person is confident enough to say that. Where me, I could never say that because I know it's a bunch of BS.
Right. Vanny Harry says it all the time.
Oh my
the
God.
food babe. Don't get me onto the food babe. We're all
Yeah.
gonna vomit in here.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay. Yeah. So there's a lot more to talk about. We got 15 more minutes, so let's try to get to everything. So let's move on to organic.
okay.
Should I limit myself to shopping in the little organic section of the grocery store
And pay more.
whatever the premium is for that organic?
Is it
food?
worth it?
No. Yes. Maybe.
Okay, that's her answer always. We've got used to that. Okay, so,
My,
so tell me
it's
the
funny
no,
because my
yes, and maybe
students
part.
start to answer that because I know what you want to say. So here's the deal. So why are you choosing organic?
Because it's trendy. Because somebody says, "Oh, it's natural."
You want to be a good parent, therefore, little Madeline,
That's right. And if it's not organic, then it's got all these awful pesticides and all these hormones and all that other terrible stuff that any right-thinking person would try to avoid.
So organic fruits and vegetables use pesticides.
Okay.
different types of pesticides. Is that the distinction?
They're botanical.
Okay.
They are botanical, but there are some that if they don't have it available as botanical, they are allowed to use some synthetic.
Okay.
So.
And still be organic.
And still be organic.
Right.
Yeah. So, just want to any bacteria that may any foodborne illness, not going to matter. It doesn't, whether it's conventionally grown or organic. That doesn't matter. Just as likely to.
Okay. Does the science show that organic food provides better nutrition than non-organic food?
It does not.
Okay.
It does not. I've got it's, I don't know exactly, like 55 nutrition meta-analysis show that it's not significant
Right.
to pay that much.
Right. Nutrition is not going to be any different.
Right. Yeah.
And what about taste?
Taste, I think that's personally, I personally don't choose organic.
Right.
And I think part of it comes from my first job as a dietitian was working at Parkland Hospital.
Uh-huh.
I was there almost 7 years, which is the county hospital. And I would just please just eat a vegetable.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
One a week.
Right.
I mean,
Eat a
seriously,
vegetable.
I know.
Not a fried potato chip vegetable either. It doesn't count.
So if people have this
Ketchup
idea
does
that it's
not count as a
either they
vegetable.
have to eat organic or not, I think it's throwing the wrong message out there.
Mm-hmm.
And organic junk food, and I don't want to say junk, organic, cookies and whatever, they're still, foods that shouldn't be eaten, 24 hours a day.
Right,
So,
right. Yeah, I've seen, I have had friends who say, "Oh, but the organic food just tastes better. I can tell when it's organic." And then you see, I mean, that's been studied too. And whenever there are double-blind studies, nobody can tell what's organic and what's not. They think they can.
It's the power of the mind.
If they know it's organic, they can convince themselves that it tastes better. But if they are presented with two bananas without an identification that one is organic and one is not, and they taste them and try to pick, they can't pick the organic one at better than chance.
Right, exactly. And also, so taste, I think that's a totally individual, subjective, right. And as far as environment, okay, what's better? Is it, buying local, conventionally grown, or where's it coming from?
Right.
I had to buy I was doing a cooking demonstration last fall, and I had to buy some red bell peppers, which I love. And
me too.
They're my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
And they have
they're expensive.
They are.
Why are they more expensive than green peppers?
Because red's more expensive than green. Come on.
No,
and
that red food coloring costs a lot.
Maybe because they take twice as long to grow.
Is
I
it
don't know.
twice?
Well, I mean,
I have no idea.
they're green that are.
Yeah,
you know,
they're more ripe, right?
Yeah,
Isn't that
yeah.
that it
So
basically?
Oh, is that right?
Green
But they
peppers
have
become
a-
red peppers.
I didn't know that.
Yep.
Yeah. What do you
Have you ever
know?
seen on a
So,
green
so
pepper
green
there's a
pepper
little
and a red
tinge
pepper
of
is
You know
the
how
same, except that they're older?
Mm-hmm.
What about yellow ones? Are they about rotten?
That I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a little. I don't know.
Different
Must be.
species or
But I've-
subspecies? of
you-
pepper?
But there's twice
yeah.
as much vitamin C
Mm-hmm.
in red bell peppers, and generally speaking, the more colorful your plate, the more nutritious it's going to be. That's just in general. But anyway, so I was buying red bell peppers, and there were these beautiful, and they happened to be on at a good price. I wasn't paying; it wasn't my bill, but anyway, so they were great. And then I walked by the organic area, and they had these little weeny little red bell peppers, and I'm in the organic area. And I'm like,
Right.
I'm just out of curiosity, where are these from? And they always have the little sticker on there. So I looked at the sticker. They were from the Netherlands,
Yeah.
5,000 miles away.
Give
Right.
some time to turn red.
Uh-huh. Plenty of time to turn
But I
around.
mean, as far as for the environment, I guess
Right.
Yeah,
there's I've read a little bit about the whole buy local phenomenon, and that is a very fraught topic because buying local may mean buying something that is not produced by the high efficiency producer. And so the impact on the environment of buying local can be no better than or even worse than buying some products that come from far away if they're produced inexpensively and in an environmentally sensitive way a long way off. But if you're producing local, then there's a lot more transport for small local farms. And so the other things that go along with the production of the food, meaning transport from the field to your table, can be more expensive. I don't know. It's something that we'd have to Google, and I didn't even think about looking that up. If I had, I could have been more eloquent about this because I have done a little bit of time. Thank you. I did spend a little time on that, but buy local makes sense to me, and I go to the farmer's market because it seems like a good idea.
Well,
it's
a
kind of
fun
fun
thing to
go
do.
down to
Yeah.
the farmer's market, right?
And then they let you taste it, which is wonderful.
Sometimes
they
yes.
do.
But I no longer feel quite as virtuous when I do that because I realize that buy local is not necessarily always an unalloyed good for the environment or for me. But buy local, fine. I'm not trying to discourage anyone from buying local, but don't think that just because you've bought local, you've necessarily been responsible. Look it up and read about it because there's a literature about that.
Yeah.
Okay. I got so much more to talk about. Here's one thing that I've always thought, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong about this. A million years ago, when we were pre-human species, things like fat and salt were scarce. And so when and this is just my personal, made it up myself hypothesis, when we were on the savannah trying to survive, when we found a source of fat or a source of salt, it was in our evolutionary survival interest to eat as much as we could, to store up reserves for a time when they would be scarce, because those were scarce. Today, we evolved to store up and to crave fat and salt to store up for lean times, but we no longer have lean times. And so we still have those cravings, and so we crave the fat, we crave the salt because we evolved to be that way, but now the conditions no longer apply, and that's why we're fat and salty and water retaining and all that stuff. Is that just crazy?
No, you have an interesting theory. Physiologically, our bodies haven't changed. I mean, in the last 100 years or so, what's changed a huge amount in the last couple of decades is what? Our environment.
Sure.
You're talking about where we're buying. I mean, I remember growing up. I mean, the McDonald's didn't even have a drive-through. I'm aging myself, you know. I mean,
oh yeah, I was.
I mean,
yeah,
there
too.
were, it was, I mean, food was, it wasn't, you go to, okay, I have, in one of my presentations, I have, a few slides. You know, I have my own home. I do a lot of my own home stuff. Go to Home Depot, right there at the checkout, all the candy I want.
Oh yes.
I have my own business. I go to Office Depot at the checkout, loads of all the candy I want
in bulk.
In bulk.
Right.
I go to Joanne Fabrics because I like to do craft type stuff.
And at Office Depot, we also have Monster energy drink.
Yeah. I mean, it's
which we really need to
absolutely,
get by.
absolutely.
It's one of the critical. Oh, because
most
I don't
definitely
read that stuff. Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
But I mean, I'm saying, I mean, the available. We have food in places. I mean, everywhere that food didn't used to be. So the convenience, the accessibility of it, and it's. I mean, some of the food has been described as it's like the vanishing calorie, I think is the terminology for it. Because when you eat it, you don't even know you're eating it. Think of like a Cheeto. It's just like the ball Cheetos that, ooh, they just like melt in your mouth. You don't even know because they just like dissolve so easily. And so you don't even know you're eating these calories.
And you're not satiated.
Oh, totally not. Totally not. I had one of those young women that's working with me. We did a little experiment. We put in vinegar, we put a piece of bread, and we put a piece of cheese to in vinegar just to see, how long.
Right.
And nothing in 24 hours, and nothing happened to the piece of cheese, and the bread. I mean, it was started to disintegrate. But I mean, it's just kind of simulating. Of course, we don't have enzymes. Didn't have any enzymes there, but just showing you how the different quality and makeup composition of foods can impact.
Okay, a couple other things that were specifically on my list to ask about. One is high fructose corn syrup. There are a lot of people who say high fructose corn syrup is the devil. And I've always been a little skeptical of that, but I really have no clue. It seems to me that sugar is sugar is sugar, and if you eat high fructose corn syrup, and then as opposed to some other kind of fructose is fructose. But I've never been confident enough in that to say or to insist on it, so I don't know.
Double and Dr. Pepper tastes better.
Isn't that from cane sugar? Like
that's cane sugar.
Cane that's what I'm saying. Sugar versus fructose.
Okay.
Well, okay. So do you know why it's high? Do you know why it's high fructose? Why it's called that?
Because it has more fructose.
Do you know how much more?
A lot more.
So it's like
no idea.
It's 55% fructose,
as opposed to
45% glucose versus cane sugar, which is like 50-50.
Okay.
So
50-50 to 55-45 is a big difference.
Huge. Oh my gosh, it's huge.
Is it?
It doesn't sound that big to somebody like me.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
Facetious?
I'm very quite.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
No. Agave. Agave. Have you heard of agave?
Oh my gosh, I've got some.
Oh my gosh, so healthy. Oh my gosh.
I sip my tea with it every day. In fact,
yes, it's so good.
My cup of tea.
Do you know how much fructose is in there?
That I left sitting on my desk instead of bringing with me was sweetened with with agave.
Agave.
Yes.
You know how much fructose is in there?
idea. No idea. No clue.
80 to 90%.
90%? What? So wait a second. Hold on. So cane sugar has 50% fructose. High fructose corn syrup has 55%, and agave nectar has 80%. And so why am I supposed to be scared of high fructose corn syrup?
You shouldn't be.
Well, then why does everybody tell me I should?
Because it's facts versus fear. There's fear mongers out there that are just it's fear. It's fear. The Vani Haris of the world. Yeah. So here's the deal. I mean, we consume too much. We consume too much sugar just in general.
Right.
So
now,
it doesn't matter where.
I believe that.
Yeah, it doesn't matter where it's coming from. We just consume too much added sugar. So regardless of your choice of where it's coming from. So
is it a better thing though to go with something like Sweet and Low or Trivia, if it's okay to use a couple of names?
Yes, no, maybe.
Okay.
So I am an equal opportunity.
You are so much help.
I am an equal opportunity artificial sweetener user.
Okay.
I use the pink, the blue, and the yellow.
Okay. Now, I just was reading something. In fact,
Oh my God, it's
preparing-
a chemical. Don't use it. I mean, there's
I
so
know, we
much
already went
stuff.
through
I
that.
know.
Everything's a
Yeah.
chemical. That's the thing to remember. There's this phenomenon known as chemophobia, fear of chemicals. Okay, listen to me out there. Everything is chemicals.
Our bodies. Can you?
Our bodies are chemicals. Everything is chemicals. The fact that something is a chemical just means it exists. It doesn't mean it's bad. It means it exists. So don't tell me that because something is a chemical, I need to avoid it. Because if I were avoiding all chemicals, I'd be avoiding everything.
I drink Diet Coke.
You do? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I know. Can you believe it?
I sometimes drink, I do. I drink dihydrogen monoxide.
Do you?
I do.
Water.
Yes.
For shame. One thing I've really noticed, though, in the last probably 5 to 10 years, I love Coke. I can't drink it because I start to really notice the difference in my ankles. Just too much information, perhaps. TMI. Okay.
That's okay.
But I mean, sodium. I'm assuming that's what it is.
But surprisingly, soda is very low in sodium.
So, what's causing that issue?
Then what's causing that issue? Any idea?
I don't know.
Okay.
But it's really, I mean, people think, and when my students do their diet analysis and they say that and their sodium, they have to cut back on their soda. I was like, okay, you did not look at your diet analysis closely enough because there's not a lot of sodium there.
All right. So we need to wrap up, but we didn't even get to talking about raw milk. We didn't get to talk about MSG.
She'll have to come back.
We didn't talk about GMOs. We didn't talk about Malcolm Gladwell's podcast episode of Revisionist History, where he went back and revisited the old kind of McDonald's French fries, and they were so much better, but we don't sell them anymore because of trans fats, even though they tasted so much better.
They don't have any trans
Not
fats
anymore, but they used to before they changed. The whole point of the episode is they changed the kind of fat they were frying them in, and they're no longer tasty. They used to be really tasty, but now they're not anymore.
Interesting.
Anyway, so we got a lot left. I really am sorry we didn't get to GMOs. I really am sorry we didn't get to MSG, especially because that's one of my little hobby horses. Don't worry about MSG, folks.
That's what makes Chinese food taste good.
And don't worry about GMOs too. There's only there's
about
only 9 GMO foods, by the way.
Yeah.
So yeah.
There's all you out there. There's really no reason to worry about GMOs. There's certainly no reason to worry about MSG. Double-blind test after test after test after test has shown that the idea of Chinese restaurant syndrome, where people get headaches from eating MSG and all that stuff, it is a headache, but it is all in your head because people who are fed MSG, food with MSG and food without MSG.
We didn't even talk about supplements too.
We didn't talk about supplements either.
Okay, so to be careful. Oh my gosh. Oh yeah.
Okay.
All right, we gotta go.
So eat real food. Eat food.
Eat food.
Not too
Not
much.
too much. Mostly plants.
There you go.
So there you go. Eat food, not too much, mostly plants.
Words to live by.
We definitely buy at least that much of Michael Pollan's 7 rules.
Yes.
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Jennifer Neily. It was great.
Thank you.
It was so
It's
interesting.
great to
I
be
wish
here.
we had
Thank you
another
so
hour.
much. I know. It's a lot of fun. Thank you.
Jennifer, thank you so much. Patrick?
you.
He's
Thank you,
Patrick
Erica.
Moore.
And she's Erica Edwards, and we're going to go.
And you have been listening to Moore and Friends. Views expressed on this show are our own and those of our guests, unless otherwise specifically stated, and do not necessarily reflect the opinion of KDUX Web Radio, Richland College, or the DCCCD.